guys, this is our presentation on the auditory pathway. My name is Kaylana.
I'm Jasmine.
And I'm Naomi.
So today we're going to be covering the outer ear, the middle ear, inner ear, and the central auditory system. I'll be talking about the outer ear. So the pinna has 10 structural landmarks. Starting at the top of the ear, we have the tubercle, the helix right underneath, the crus helix, the antihelix, the concha, the antitragus, the lobule, and the intertragal notch. And then we have the tragus right on top. And lastly, the triangular fossa. All of these landmarks have their own unique shape that helps support the physiology of the pinna, which is made up of cartilage. The pinna is made up of elastic cartilage. As you may know, the ear has different folds and shapes. This allows it to filter frequency of sound. There are two different ways to localize sound. Monaural localization cues are created by reflection and refraction of sound by the folds, cavities, and ridges of the outer ear. The binaural localization cues are created by differences in sound arriving at the right ear and left ear. The ear canal amplifies sounds by acting as a funnel, and it amplifies sounds by acting as a resonating chamber. It protects the tympanic membrane and the outer and the middle ear from physical damage. The crumen provides a lubricating protective layer for the skin.
Hello, I'm Braden, and I'm going to be continuing the slides. So after sound is collected by the outer ear, it travels through the ear canal and strikes the tympanic membrane. The eardrum begins to vibrate, converting air pressure into mechanical energy. These vibrations then move into the middle ear, where they'll be amplified and pass deeper into the hearing pathway.
So excessive crumen can result in conductive hearing loss, tinnitus, vertigo, and discomfort or itching in the middle ear.
Next, I will be talking about the middle ear. The anatomy of the middle ear consists of the tympanic membrane, the eustachian tube, and the ossicles. The tympanic membrane contains the pars flaccida, which is relatively loose, the pars tensa, which is stretched, the cone of light in which the light reflects off of the tight eardrum, and the umbo, which is the tip of the cone. The tympanic membrane helps protect the inner ear by acting as a barrier from dirt and dust while also transferring the vibrations from sound waves onto the ossicles. Next, the eustachian tube is a hollow tube that connects the middle ear to the throat. It works to equalize pressure between me and the environment as well as draining fluid. In children, the eustachian tube slopes down only 10 degrees, whereas adults' eustachian tube slopes down 35 degrees. Because of this, children's eustachian tubes are less effective at draining fluid and equalizing pressure, often leading to middle ear infections. Next, the ossicles consist of the malleus, incus, and stapes, in which all help to amplify sound from the tympanic membrane to the inner ear. The middle ear muscles are the tensor tympani muscle, which is attached to the malleus, and the stapedius muscle, which is attached to the stapes. Our middle ear muscles function to help protect us from loud sounds by tensing up the tympanic membrane and blocking sound transmission. Lastly, as the sound waves travel from air to fluid, there is a loss of energy since the air is less dense than fluid. Because of this, the middle ear has three mechanisms, including the area ratio, in which the tympanic membrane is 17 times larger than the stapes footplate and works as a pressure amplifier, the ossicular lever, in which a lever is created and the length of the malleus is greater than the length of the incus, and finally, the buckling effect, in which force is transmitted from the center of the tympanic membrane. As a result of the three mechanisms working together, the sound pressure increases. As the stapes footplate pushes on the oval window, the vibrations are then sent into the fluid of the cochlea, setting up the next stage, the inner ear.
So I'll be talking about the inner ear. The anatomy of the inner ear consists of the oval and round window, cochlea, vestibular organ, organ of Corti, and the eighth cranial nerve. So, what is the oval window? The oval window is directly in contact with the stapes footplate, and the round window is in the cochlea and vibrates in an opposite phase as the oval window. The oval window and round window are membrane-covered openings that allows fluid in the cochlea to flow and connecting the middle ear to the inner ear. Basically, it allows the transmission of vibrations and turns it into sound waves. And then the cochlea has 3 different chambers, and each are filled with certain fluids. First, we have the scala vestibuli, which terminates at the oval window. It's filled with perilymph, which is a sodium-rich fluid. And then the scala tympani, which is also filled with the sodium-rich fluid. It terminates at the round window. And then we have the scala media, which is filled with endolymph, which is a potassium-rich fluid. And what these does is it detects sound vibrations through these fluids and passes it through further into the cochlea. And then the cochlea also has 2 different membranes, the Resner's membrane and the Basler membrane. Resner's membrane separates the scala vestibuli and the scala media. As for the Basler's membrane, it separates the scala media and scala tympani, but it also houses the organ of Corti, which I'll be talking about later. It uses tonotopic organization to interpret high frequencies at its base and low frequencies at its apex. And then we have the vestibular organ. It is responsible for balance, and it relays information on body positioning and how the body is moving. There are semicircular canals, the utricle and the sagittal. As for the semicircular canals, there are 3 of them: the anterior, posterior, and lateral. These allow for angular acceleration in the appropriate direction. And as for the utricle, it allows for linear acceleration for the horizontal plane. The sagittal allows for linear acceleration for the vertical plane. And this is also where the vestibular organ connects to the cochlea. So back to the organ of Corti. It is found within the scala media. It contains outer and inner hair cells, which uses stereocilia and converts sound into vibrations. Converts sound vibrations to electrical signals for the brain through these hair cells, as they're like little bristles that kind of brush against the temporal membrane. And then as for the 8th cranial nerve, it is also known as the vestibulocochlear nerve, responsible for transmission of balance and hearing. And it consists of afferent and efferent neurons. Afferent meaning it goes from the organ of Corti to the brainstem, and efferent is from the brainstem to the organ of Corti. And outer hair cell damage can lead to noise-induced and age-related hearing loss. Outer hair cells are more susceptible to damage from noise exposure and onotoxic medication as compared to the inner hair cell.
Okay, finally, the sound signals leave the inner ear through the 8th cranial nerve and enter the brainstem. This marks the start of the central auditory system. Here, the brain begins decoding where the sound came from and how loud it is and what kind of signal it might be before sending it upward for full interpretation. Inside the brainstem, the sound signal passes through several key centers. The superior olivary complex compares both ears' input to determine sound location. Then, the lateral lemniscus carries that information upward to the inferior colliculus, which helps coordinate reflexes and spatial awareness of sound. Finally, after leaving the brainstem, sound information reaches the medial geniculate body, which acts as a relay station in the thalamus. From there, it travels to the primary auditory cortex in the temporal lobe, the area that lets us recognize speech, pitch, and rhythm. The entire auditory system works together as a pathway, from the outer ear through the middle and inner ear, and along the auditory nerve, and finally into the brain. So each step shapes the sound, and even when the ears function perfectly, the brain must still interpret what we hear. That's why conditions like auditory processing disorder and central deafness can affect understanding and not just hearing.
And then here are references. Thank you.
Thank you for listening.